everyone, welcome to this special Q&A session for She Leads Cape Town. I'm Lenore, I'm the founder of She Leads Cape Town. It's amazing that we can do this session today because usually we're all on a Zoom call together, having group discussions, engaging with our speakers directly. But we do realize at this time of the year, everyone is suffering some Zoom fatigue. So what we do is we partner with thought leaders, speakers, leadership coaches, and on a monthly basis, we bring across topics that really address the barriers that women might be facing, and we want to do that in the most accessible way. So that's really what She Leads is about, empowering women, and then also how do we move towards solutions. So if there are certain barriers, providing those resources, how do we then propel ourselves forward? And so I'm really pleased that we can have this discussion with Phumi Nobiva. So hope you enjoy the Q&A. Thanks Phumi for joining us. Thanks, welcome to a very special Q&A talk with She Leads Cape Town.
Thank you for having me.
And welcome to Cape Town.
I'm loving Cape Town. It's so good to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. And thanks so much for suggesting that we do it in this format because it's much better. We've got the city in the background.
Why do Zoom? For as long as we're like social distancing, we're good.
Yes.
But I just felt like it's a beautiful way to come back and say hello to the world.
Yeah.
So thank you for accommodating me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Right, so guys, just to introduce you to Phumi Nobiva. She is an international speaker. She is a storyteller at the core. She has graduated from Oprah's class in terms of the Leadership Academy, and she also serves on the alumni of the Leadership Academy. So quite a long list of accomplishments, such a formidable lady. But what I find most impressive about Phumi is that she speaks out about social injustices and really in various topics such as education, HIV and AIDS, all of those areas that really affect Africans as a whole and various adversities and how you can overcome it. And through telling her stories, inspiring others to do the same. So Phumi, thanks so much for joining us.
It's been a while since I've heard the quote-unquote credentials.
Yes.
I haven't spoken in a couple of months. But yes, as you said, I am an international speaker. I am a communication strategist by trade. I love storytelling. I love the ability to take the medium and the vehicle of storytelling and embed in it people's stories, social issues, real lived struggles, and use that as a mechanism to inform, a mechanism to lower barriers, because naturally as people we feel different from the next person. But when you hear my story, then you start to relate. And once there's that relevance between people, it becomes easier to be more compassionate and be more empathetic about what's happening in the world. And that's actually how we change the world from a communication standpoint. I had the honor of graduating as part of the first class of the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls. It was life-changing. I will always credit my life to the indomitable character that Miss Winfrey has, the generosity that she has. I was born and bred in poverty, and for many girls like myself, there was no hope. But education, as you know, is the ultimate equalizer, which is the most important for girl children. And I got that shot, and I took it. I ran with it. I graduated among the first in my, I graduated among the top in my class, and I got a full ride scholarship to the United States. And I graduated amongst the top there with my honors degree and got presidential scholarship to complete my master's. I've been on scholarship my whole life, and I'm really thankful for how far I've come. And the reason I said yes to this interview is because it's a woman and it's for women. And I'm where I am in my life because of women. Church women who would come and pick me up when my mother was dying and make sure that I'm not fading in the depression of poverty. Women who were social workers who would come and check on my family and I. Women like Oprah Winfrey who cared about what's happening to the young girls while social injustice is plaguing our streets. It is women constantly, so it means so much for me to be here.
I think it's great for me that you mentioned that women play such a big part of your life. I mean, that's what She Leads is all about, empowering women, taking up those leadership positions, taking up the space, and so on.
Yes.
But I'm dying to know, what was it like to meet Oprah? What has surprised you the most about
It was
and I know that she's one of the women that played a big role in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to know. You want to know about the Queen of Talk.
Queen of Talk. Yeah, so meeting Oprah Winfrey, Mom Oprah, the Queen of Talk, was incredible. I actually am one of the interesting cases because I didn't really know Oprah. I knew her as the woman on TV. My responsibility when I came home from school, because my grandmother, who is one of the central female figures in my life, she was a domestic worker, and my job was when I come back from school, at some point I knew when the street lights start coming on, I need to run inside the house, I need to get the meat out of the fridge so that it can thaw. And then by the time she gets home, the food is ready. And during that time, the woman on TV would be in the background. That's the only orientation I had. I knew that she made people really, really happy and sometimes really, really sad. That was it. But when I met her in person, I couldn't believe that this global force could be so humble, so gracious, so generous. I think there's actually a video of like little old 13-year-old me walking into a room and be like, oh my God, is that Oprah? There are like big gold fluorescent lights in the room, and her best friend Gayle King is in the room. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, girl, it's now or never. You need to pull all the stops. Okay, this is Oprah Winfrey. But she was really friendly. I came into the room and I was like, hi, Miss Oprah. She was like, hi, Mpumi. She kind of butchered my name. It was like, and then she was like, give me a hug, welcome. And after she gave me that hug, I sort of like relaxed, which is actually the person I've known over the years, the privilege I've had to sort of know her in an intimate way as a mentor, is somebody who's very supportive, very generous, and again, one of those women who are always in your corner, who are concerned about every aspect of your life and wanting to give you their absolute best to make sure that you don't get handed a shorthand, but you get the best value of her experience so that you don't start where she started, but she actually becomes an accelerator in your life. That's the solution to true women empowerment. And yeah, she changed my life. She took me to the White House. That's how I got to meet First Lady Michelle Obama and President Barack Obama. It was life-changing. I had so many incredible experiences that I have to admit at that point I felt entitled to, because when you come from nothing, it's so easy to get clouded by the cameras and people in your face, and you start thinking, oh, this is the way it goes. And she's the person who provides it. But now that I'm like away, I'm like, oh, it was her all along. So let's get into the talk, right? So we're going to get into the hard stuff. So really, I think we have to acknowledge that this year has been hard. It's been challenging for most people, but at the same time, so many opportunities for us to learn about ourselves, and show our resilience and what we're capable of. But one thing we know is that for many women, it's natural to at this stage of the year feel like, okay, did I do enough? Did I do everything that I wanted to accomplish from a work perspective, from a life perspective, and maybe feeling disappointed or stuck or lost. So many different feelings at the end of the day. And what we want to discuss is, our talk today is really about being better than yesterday. And for me, better than yesterday doesn't mean that we want to compare ourselves to others. It's really about stepping it up for ourselves and being, raising that bar for ourselves. So, and the question is, how can we do that in a conscious, loving way, being more self-aware as we move towards what we deem to be our greatness, right? So, Mpumi, I just wanted to hear from you, what has your experience been like this year? What would you say would be the key takeaways that you've looked at for this year as you reflect on it, and what stood out for you, and what would you advise our audience as we reflect on this year and to really move towards the next level,
positive way.
In a positive way.
Yeah.
2020.
Yes.
Hey, 2020's been real. Like, yo, 2020 has been such a teachable moment for me, and I believe for everybody in the world. There've been lots of lows. There've been lots of moments of confusion. There've been lots of moments of loneliness and sort of stuff. Just wondering if, am I on track? Am I doing things correctly? I see that in my friends. I see that in my peers, even in my relationship with my partner. And I think it's so important to keep perspective of what's happening in a global scale. One of my favorite teachers is the late Barbara Marx Hubbard. She's a visionary and a futurist who speaks about how the beauty of disruption is that it breeds evolution. You know that quote that says necessity breeds invention? It's this theology, this paradigm of thinking that says when difficulty ensues, much like when a mother is in labor and a child is coming through the canal, getting ready to enter this world, that is a moment of great difficulty for both the mother and the child itself, wiggling through the cervix, making sure oxygen is maintained. Think of the butterfly when it's still a caterpillar and it's transitioning into becoming a full butterfly. It's a very delicate process. You think of teachers like T.D. Jakes. He put out a book called Crushing last year. It speaks about the process of making wine and how those grapes absolutely must be crushed. Everything grows in some form, shape, through pressure, through refinement, and I believe that's what's been happening to us throughout this year. It's the only way I can rationalize it. It's the only way I can stay sane, is knowing that if you look back in our world, there was so much chaos across our politics, across cultural decay. You know, there was so much happening. And when the pandemic hit, the perspective of the importance of a human life and how delicate life is and how amazing it is that even though we don't have everything we want in life, we do have things to be grateful for right now. When we saw those bodies piling up in the news and somebody next door dying and the lady who's a clerk and the ambulance driver and the grocery store person, then it became real. So I would say a lot of our sisters out there may be feeling lost, desolate, kind of out of place. I spoke to a colleague of mine at Oscillate, and I was saying, you know, I don't know if it's end of year fatigue, but I have days where I absolutely don't know what to do with the company mission. I don't know if I'm moving forward or backwards.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is, the only way I can move forward with compassion for myself is by understanding, back to Barbara's theory, that the whole world is in transition. Actually, spiritual people like Eckhart Tolle would say, Deepak Chopra, even Oprah Winfrey, would say that our world is moving into a deeper level of consciousness now. We've moved past the idea of religion being the right way, or a woman has to be this. So people are becoming spiritual as individuals. We're meditating, we're hiking, we're connecting with nature. We're going to a very conscious place where we're understanding that energy is what informs everything in this realm. And for that to happen, you need disruption so that we can actually settle into ourselves. So wherever you are and whatever it is you may be going through, I say, as personal as it feels, try to not make it personal. Try and understand that everybody on this planet is experiencing that shift, that kind of like a comfortable tug as we move into a new tomorrow. And be compassionate in knowing that there's something to be grateful for the fact that you are alive, for the fact that you can even contemplate whether you're doing things properly or not, you know? That's what I try to do. And then I just make it to the next day. Grab a cocktail if you can, maybe some salt, bath salts, go on a walk with your puppy. But don't let the ego consume you so much, because ego is your idea of what you're supposed to be and what's supposed to be happening. And that causes dissatisfaction. But if you surrender to where you are right now and what's happening in life, then that opens up your whole experience.
Yeah.
That's really how I've been living through 2020.
Amazing. So what I hear you saying is that, it's hard, and just to acknowledge the fact that it is challenging, but focus on your mission and what you're trying to do, and, get out of your head a little bit.
Get out of your head. I mean, just let it go. Like, look, everything in this planet is shifting. For the first time, the dolphins came out to swim in Italy during quarantine. Like, there's magic happening in the globe. If you're in space, literally, anyone in space looking at us is looking at like tiny dots of dust. Relax. Like, it's so easy to think that everything revolves around our failures and our mistakes. And then we get stuck in them.
Yeah.
But we really cause an end to our own world. When something is just a fleeting experience, it's just a passing moment. And if it's failure, it's just there to show you, oh, okay, I messed up. That's really interesting. What can I do differently? I've learned to be that person, in contrast to who I used to be, where I would take the failure and just stretch it for miles, drape it in, like wear it as a blanket of shame. No, it's everybody's going through tough times. You're not alone. And truth is, we're all transitioning towards a new future that nobody really knows. But what you do have control over is the ability to decide who you're going to be. So if you sit and cook in anxiety right now, that's what you're going to produce, because it's all about energy.
Yeah.
But if you know that my ultimate goal is peace, my ultimate goal is love, my ultimate goal is joy, I'm going to create that now. I don't care if it works or not, but I'm going to do everything in my power to make decisions right now that will result in the outcome that I want. And usually when I do that, there's no room for anxiety or harboring failure, or even feelings of remorse and unforgiveness for the past or life. I just get to a place where I'm like, God, I'm so grateful I have another moment to try again. And I wish more people would do that.
Yeah, that's exactly why we have this talk, and that's exactly why we're inspiring our audience right now. So it gets us to the next topic. We talked about better than yesterday. What does it mean for you? What does that mean for Phumi? And also thinking about our audience. You alluded to it in the in what we just spoke about. But yeah, when you think about that in terms of your journey.
Mm-hmm. Being better than yesterday for me is so deeply personal, and I really appreciate that question, because the way my life unfolded was pure, almost magical. Going from poverty, Miss Wimpy coming into my life, giving me a shot, taking off, taking on the stages, sharing my story, being on newspapers, the White House, It was so much, so fast. It was amazing, but at the same time, I can think of so many moments where I lost track of who I was. I lost sight of why I was even so ambitious to begin with as a little girl. And I think this year has helped me introspect and think a lot about who I've been, so that I can be a lot more conscious about who I'm being moving forward. It can feel very uncomfortable, but the question of what is being better than yesterday, for me, correlates very much to the question of who am I? It's one of those existential things that can seem very difficult and intimidating initially, because for me to clearly define what it means for me to be better than yesterday, it means I have to be honest and courageous enough and humble enough to look honestly at yesterday and take into account what happened yesterday, who I was yesterday, how I contributed to what happened yesterday. And then based on that information, be able to say, and so what can that teach me about myself? And what does that tell me about what I have to change, what I have to improve on, what I have to maintain, so that tomorrow is better, And so I think that's very different, because And this is why mental health is such an important concept for me, like a real lived experience. The reason I can think of how I was plagued by so much anxiety, so much depression, and why I see that many people struggle with mental health in that aspect is because we get stuck. We either look back and get stuck, or we're not even willing to look back at all. And the problem with that is you miss out on the gems and the knowledge and the wisdom that is embedded in the life experiences. You know, they say if you want to know where you're going, then you have to look at the past, see how it's happened before. So for me, it's almost become an art, a way of life. It's not easy. It's like a bitter medicine, but it cures the wound faster because you're not like it's interesting. There are people in our world who don't realize how they've been the same person doing the same thing for 5 years, for 10 years. You're dating the same toxic person. Mama Oprah usually says it's just wearing different pants, right? You're doing the same pathetic things that you did, and you don't realize that you are the person who's keeping your own self in that cycle because you're not giving yourself the time to introspect about who you've been, who you are being, and who you want to be. We're creators, so fundamentally, you inform all aspects of that process, you know?
Yeah.
So for me, it's become a culture, a practice to say, how can I do things better, you know? And there's never a time where I look back and feel, oh, it was absolutely perfect, darling. No, there's always some mess to clean up. But I feel better about myself when I know that. Well, there are things I was faced with about myself. For instance, I like to call it my past life, but in my past, like, big speaking social life, my old Instagram, I had such a big ego. I didn't even know. I was a mess. I was insufferable, you know, because ego means that you really think the world and everything revolves around you. And I think to an extent I did, because I had the story and people were attracted to it and I felt connected to it. But I didn't realize that at some point that story became like a prison. Because it's a story of trauma, of watching my mother die. It became a prison. And then I didn't realize how I would think of myself as that 9-year-old girl, when in fact I'm 25 years old living in Los Angeles. There's no reason to bring that drama over here, girlfriend. You know what I mean? And so it's taken a lot for me to look at that person and feel the shame, feel the humiliation of making mistakes, live with the fact that there's some people who are never going to forget that you did something, but also look at that 25-year-old with love and think, man, she really tried. She was doing her best. Those were her best shots she was throwing. And I have to release that experience with love and say, I'm so grateful I got to live that. Now I'm 27. What does that look like? 30s around the corner. What's that going to be? You know? So then it becomes fun. It becomes just a way to say, how can I become a better person?
You know, a lot of what you're speaking about for me is about conscious living, right? And it sounds like something clicked in you a while back, and this has become your way of being, right? So what does conscious living mean to you? And for a listener that is maybe starting on this journey, is feeling a certain way about this year, how can they make that first step? How can they, we work a lot with coaches, so a lot of what we do is, encourage things like journaling, which allows you to do that brain dump, write down your thoughts, etc. And like you just said, which is, who am I now, and who is the person that I'd like to be?
Right.
And look at it holistically, not just about that next promotion or whatever the case is, because so often we just focus on success, and I think this has taught us to really look at it 360.
Right.
So when you think about that, what does it mean? And I love the fact that you talked about self-love as well, because something that we'd like to look into next year is that self-love is a prerequisite to confidence, because I think when we look at confidence, it's about different elements.
Right.
But I'm really trying to look into how we can change the mindset of women to not be so critical about themselves open up, that level of confidence. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a really good question. And in as much as I'd love to take the credit to say, oh, this clicked. I woke up one morning and it just clicked. No, honey. I actually had a nervous breakdown. Look, if you're a woman, in my opinion, historically speaking, from a sociological perspective, from a worldview, you've been traumatized in some other way, right? Beyond race, beyond being African, beyond women everywhere have always been subjugated to something, oppressed at some level. And the point I'm getting to is the fact that if you've experienced any level of trauma and have not had any opportunity to address it, chances are you're living through those wounds, you're breathing through those wounds, and because you're wanting to survive, because the brain is so intelligent, you've figured out hacks, ways of surviving. In science, they refer to this as autopilot, where you're living on the edge. You're just going from one thing to the next. Grab a coffee so you can survive, grab the cigarette so that you feel normal again, have sex with that person, go to work. For some people it's work. Stay at work when everybody has left, be the first at it, whatever it is that makes you feel like you're getting your oxytocin pump. And in the world, it appears like, oh, I'm holding it together, or I'm just doing this. But underneath, at an emotional, at a psychological, spiritual level, that's all behavior that is sort of hinting at an undercurrent of misalignment, of pain, of energy that is blocked. And that follows you. Followed me all the way to America. It follows you. And I would hope that women could experience it, not that I regret the way I experienced it, it's the way I could listen. But I just wish a lot more people wouldn't wait to get to the place that I got to. Because it's such a lonely, confusing, dark place when you're confronted with depression and anxiety at a time when you should be soaring, a time when you should be brilliant, budding, blooming, blossoming, and you're unable to do that because issues have caught up with you, insecurities are boggling you down, you've become an actor. That's really what I was. I was such an actress. I was such a great actress in my life. And people closest to me suffered the most because they had a craving desire to know me, but I wasn't willing to even be me because I had a very low sense of worth, of self-worth. And so living consciously started from a very, very low point when reality knocked the breath and the wind out of me so much that I found myself alone. I found myself without the standing ovations, without the crowds, without the flashing cameras, without the Instagram, which I intentionally deleted because the truth is, I had gotten to a place where I was using my Instagram to sort of keep myself eluded in this idea that I'm fine, when in fact I was in pain, I needed help, I was falling apart. But I sort of figured out that I can put a post and then get like 1,000 likes and then feel good about myself and then get this illusion that I've done something and then go to bed, feel great, wake up tomorrow. Then I'm feeling for the next thing. What's the next thing I'm going to put up so that the world thinks I'm fine? And then what's the next thing? And then the next thing. I was met with a very honest moment where life confronted me. Yo, you can keep playing people outside, but you and I both know. And it was from that place of like deep loneliness and humiliation and confusion and shame that, you know, when you've cried and you've had a really good cry, like a cry you know you want to have, but you've sort of been avoiding for years, and suddenly that cry finds you and you find yourself on the kitchen floor alone. It sounds like a movie, like some Tina Turner stuff, but for real, that's how it happens, you know? And after that cry, man, when all of that dark energy is just off you. And you just take that first breath, that first inhale, and you filled with life in a different way. You feel your pulse. It was in that moment where I just remember thinking, you know, it's been a beautiful life, but so much has been messy. And I felt sad that it took so much for me to get to that point where I could finally see that I've been so blessed. And I've wasted so much of it living in trauma, living in the past, living in resentment, living in jealousy. Even though I wouldn't think of myself as a jealous person. But you're jealous if somebody posts something and makes you feel some type of way. I don't care what you say. It's those little things. That's why I'm giving these examples. Because we think that, oh, it has to be a big... No, it's little behaviors that indicate that there are really unresolved traumas we carry around. And so living consciously for me came from getting up off that floor and saying, okay, how am I going to do this differently? Like, I don't want to spend another moment living that script. Whatever movie I've been playing, I don't want it anymore. I want to lay it to rest. What do I want? I think that's where it begins, asking the right questions. What do I want? What do I fundamentally want in this life? What am I willing to work for? What am I willing to let go of? And so from that place, I started getting the answers back from the universe. It's true. It sounds magical or like weird, but it's really true. You ask and then the teacher appears, or the answer appears, or the experience appears, and then you have to be conscious. So you can't go back and fall asleep and start playing that movie that makes you feel good. You still sit in the painful anxiety of being broken open, of having a wound of personality and knowing that you're having to start from scratch, you know? But it's from that place of humility where you take one step forward, you ask the right questions, you're honest about the answers you give yourself. And somehow that pattern of conscious thinking, of awareness, becomes a way of life to the point that even in this day, I've mastered the art as I'm sitting here. My phone can ring, and just by looking at the screen and seeing who's calling me, I pick up on the vibration and I make a decision. Yes, I pick up, or no, I don't. I used to feel so guilty about things like that. You know, like, who do you think you are? No, this is my day. It's my life experience. It's my journey, my story. I'm responsible of how this is going to turn out. And so I have to be accountable of where I direct my attention, because that's where my energy is going to flow. So that's the thing about conscious living. It's consciously looking at every aspect and saying, is this something that's worthy of my engagement? Is this person worthy of my attention? Is this relationship worthy of my presence? And being honest enough to say yes or no, and then having the courage to make the decision that will ultimately result in harmony. It's all about harmony.
Yeah.
You've got to want it, you've got to protect it, and on some days it's not going to make sense. You know, I have days where it's just the drag. But at least I'm at peace where I know, at least I'm not like surrounded by 10 people I don't even really like, or sitting in someone's car and I don't even agree with their moral principles. It's so easy to pretend, especially if you're a woman, because we're told to be small, we're told to comply. Conscious living is about honoring the truth of who you are inside, making the right decisions and taking the right actions that maintain a universe that serves the purpose of who you are. And it's a daily activity. You have to do it every day.
Yeah, amazing. And out of that journey, one of your answers that obviously came from that is the company that you created, Oscillate. So,
thank you.
Which is a social enterprise to create awareness about mental challenges.
Oh, go ahead. You're just like, yes.
Great for me. So we come towards the end. Thanks so much for joining us today. I just want to ask you finally what your parting words would be, because you know, from this discussion, it's so clear to me that we need to finish this year strong. We need to take the learnings of this year and obviously focus on being better than yesterday, and be resilient and know what we're capable of, and go into the next year very positive. What would be your parting words for yourself, and then also, of course, great things next year for you as you continue to build your brand as well as the company. What's in store for you, and then what would you, as a parting message to She Leads Cape Town?
First of all, thank you for having me. Thank you for having us. For me, this is one of the first interviews I've done since I had a nervous breakdown and since I've started my life from scratch. So thank you for making me feel safe.
Wow.
Thank you for seeing me without all the tassels and the bells and whistles, but just seeing me and finding me worthy of your time and your platform. I really appreciate that. This will feel like a promotional drop. I promise you it isn't. The reason the word Oscillate is the name of our wellness and mental health company is because it literally means to swing from one end to another, similar to a pendulum swing. The idea is that you will find yourself in moments of darkness, much like I do. You will find yourself in moments of shame, looking back at the past, moments of anxiety, thinking about the future. And you never want to get stuck in those moments, because the goal is to be here in the present moment. And how I am living through my own journey and struggles is by oscillating through the highs and lows, light and dark moments of life, which are inevitable for every person. I don't want to say life is going to be easy. I don't want to act like life is perfect. I don't want to sit here and claim to know what's in store. I can only pray. I can only intend through my actions. But what I do know is that moving forward is a lot more easier when we are honest with ourselves, when we are accepting of ourselves, when we are thankful for what we've been through, because that will afford us for what we will experience. And generally just forgive at every turn, whether it's a person, life itself, the past, a parent, a boss. As women, it's so easy to just soak in things that happen and then let them sit inside. Find a way to cleanse yourself weekly, monthly. Prioritize you. Oscillate. Oscillate. Breathe. Live through it. That's the only way you can make sure that you don't just survive mental health challenges, you don't just survive life and its struggles, but you do what I'm really working hard to do in my life, and that's to thrive. That's what we really want, is to thrive.